Last year, I was invited to speak at the Postural Restoration Symposium, annual symposium that occurs every April out in Lincoln, Nebraska. And the symposium was about basal ganglia disease. The better known basal ganglia disease being Parkinson's disease. And it's a disease of movement where a particular part of the brain, the basal ganglia, stops working the way it should. And the basal ganglia, the main focus of the basal ganglia is one of inhibition. It inhibits unwanted movements and allows the proper movement pattern to kind of be utilized by the brain at the moment in time that it needed. So our movements are stored as patterns, and these patterns have to be selected appropriately for the task at hand. It's an amazing system, but when the system breaks down, as it does in Parkinson's, and there's a basal ganglia issue, that inhibition, that momentary inhibition of all the other movements, so the best possible movement can be selected, breaks down. So the founder of PRI, Ron Haruska, he knew that I was a dance teacher, and he knows, and I've known this for a while, I just didn't think that anyone else would make the connection, that teaching dancing and teaching PRI, or simply dancing and doing PRI, are very, very similar. I often say there's really no difference. And the main reason being because PRI, remember, is walking and breathing. Walking and breathing. It's not about weightlifting. It's not about running. It's about restoring the ability to walk and breathe without compensation. The patterns that we find ourselves stuck in, this left AIC, right BC, right TMCC, or PEC, whatever patterns you want to talk about, those patterns restrict our movement, and it restricts our ability to rhythmically move from side to side. The definition, you could look at it this way, the definition of a left AIC, right BC patterned individual, which we all are to a degree, is someone who's off beat. Now, why would that be? Because if you are over on your right side, if you are stuck on your right side, you're not spending the same amount of time on your right side as you are on your left side. So your walking is arrhythmic. It's not rhythmic. It's not 1, 2, 1, 2. If you want to count it as a beat, which you can, it would just be more like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So you're spending too much time on one side with your weight on one foot. It's going to be the right foot, and less on the left. So already your walking has become non-rhythmic. You're no longer in 4/4 timing. All right, you're not dancing properly. If you dance offbeat, you cannot dance with anybody else unless they're also offbeat and they don't realize that they're offbeat. Those types of people can be really happy because they don't know they're offbeat. They don't know their partner's offbeat. So if you have two offbeat people dancing, it might not work too well, but they usually don't care, and they're probably not usually cognizant of the fact that they're offbeat. Now, an on-beat person and an off-beat person, it's impossible. It's torture. So that's not going to work. But regardless, so he wanted me to talk about teaching dancing and learning dancing. The experience of teaching dancing, the experience of learning dancing, show a couple dance steps, show music, how, not that I'm a musician, but I understand beat and rhythm because I've been dancing and teaching salsa for about 15 years now. And of course, when I get into something, I get really into it. So I went out there and I made the presentation. Now the funny thing is I only got through about a quarter of the material that I was going to present because time goes a lot faster than you think. And I had an hour and 15 minutes, I believe, on the first day and an hour on the second. Both went a little bit long, but I think I needed 4 or 5 hours to really present everything I wanted to present. So I left a lot out. And one of the things that I left out, well, so first I'm going to show you the title of the presentation. It's called Inhibiting Your Inhibitions, Rediscovering Your Innate Alternating Rhythms Through Dance. And I chose that title because most of us, PRI is about inhibition. I said this in the last video. Postural restoration is based off of inhibition, meaning we have the inability to inhibit unwanted patterning, which is this pattern that gets us stuck. We can't turn it off appropriately to allow the other pattern to turn on. So PRI is an inhibitory process. And when it comes to dancing, a lot of people, let's just say someone wants to dance. And if they don't dance, it's usually because they're afraid to. They feel they're going to be judged. They feel like they can't do it. They feel like everyone else is better. Or someone told them they couldn't dance, usually some authority figure or one of their peers, like, oh, you can't do that. Or they just created a story in their own mind. They saw people dancing and they said, well, I can't do that, so hence I can't dance. And of course, it's bullshit. Because pretty much anyone can dance. I am a testament. I didn't dance at all when I was growing up. I didn't start dancing until I was 25. So, because I didn't think I could. But then once I did, I realized I could, and because I was always athletic, so I've eventually realized that's not much different than sports. It's just organized movement. You just have to learn the beat, and that's eventually what I got really, really good at. So we get inhibited, not only for dancing, but for pretty much anything we want to do in life that we really want to do. We get inhibited quite often. You know, very few people go through life being confident in everything they do. Usually, it could be any area of your life. It could be about, you know, creating your own business, getting into a new relationship, business relationships, improving relationships with, you know, friends or spouses, whatever it's going to be. Trying new activities, whatever you want to do. If you're not doing it, it's generally out of fear of the unknown or fear of criticism, fear of something. Fear is always the underlying issue with when you become over-inhibited. So I'm going to show the second slide, inhibition. Now we need inhibition. Otherwise, you know, kids need to be inhibited. Otherwise, all their energy is going to make them get seriously hurt. So we can't just be free energy nonstop, because there's laws about it also. You can't just do what you want, you know, without any repercussions. So some inhibition is necessary, but too much inhibition inhibits flow. And so the inhibition is usually, and this was the definition, an inner impediment to free activity, expression, or functioning, such as a mental process imposing restraint upon behavior or another mental process, such as desire. So a mental process, that's what it is for most of us. We're not really being kept from doing many things from a physical standpoint. Usually it's our own brains that are saying, oh, you can't do that, you know, the little story inside our head. So it's an inner impediment to free activity, expression, or functioning, such as a mental process. And when you become too inhibited, that's where the problem is. So inhibition in and of itself is not a problem, but when you become too inhibited, it gets in the way of living your life. It gets in the way of this. Hopefully, you know, this is a great book. Am I getting it? No, there it is. This is an amazing book. It talks about the experience of flow. And flow is when you're feeling, you know, it's the ultimate experience in the sense that you lose sense of yourself when you're in flow. You know, time gets warped. There's no sense of time. The task at hand is not too easy. It's not too hard. It's challenging enough that you don't get bored, but it's not so hard that you can't do it. It's something that you enjoy doing. So for me, teaching dancing classes or doing PRI puts me in flow. And I realized the more flow I'm in, the happier I am. So to me, much of our happiness comes from getting into that state of flow. But what if the problem is, what if you don't really have those flow states because you don't like what you do, or you're too inhibited? Because too much inhibition inhibits flow. So that's really like what my presentation was about. So I just want to show like the transformation that can occur, because this is my high school yearbook picture, my senior year. There's me, Quietest. I won Quietest. But I can tell you, I wasn't actually the quietest. I was just unsure of myself. I had because of high school life and that age period, which is kind of difficult for a lot of people, I just lost confidence. And so I was very just unsure of myself. I was very apprehensive. I became that is an inhibited. I wasn't quietest. I was too inhibited. Because if you engaged me on a subject that I was really interested in, I could talk for a long time. And it was also environmental. Put me in a loud environment with loud music, oddly enough, since I dance. I don't like those environments. And I won't talk to a soul. I'll just stand there. And it's just not my environment. I like smaller groups. I like small get-togethers with people who are kind of intellectual. That's just what I like, and I'm not afraid to say that. That's what gets me into flow. I don't care about small talk. I'm not great at it. I don't care about partying. I don't care about any of that. I tried doing that, and you know what? I was never happy doing it. Never had fun. But so I had won that quietest. So I always thought, well, gee, I'm quiet and I'm introverted. I'm all this, blah blah blah, shy. And then, but in reality, I wasn't. I was just so unsure of myself, and my self-esteem had fallen so low that I became over-inhibited and fearful. And then I had also this issue of personalizing pain, rejection. I was not good with rejection. Once I felt that personal rejection, it was something that it was so overwhelming to me that I simply never wanted to really feel it again. So I never would put myself out there out of fear of getting that fear again. And that feeling is what we have to overcome. That feeling of, again, just like with dancing, if someone says, they're afraid of being judged, they're afraid of feeling stupid, they're afraid of being judged, really, that's the biggest issue. Of course, because they feel something, that nervousness, that anxiety, that tension, and they associate it with themselves. But you cannot associate normal physiological response that your brain is producing to protect you. You can't associate that feeling with you. That's the other brain. It's not your conscious part of yourself. It's the autonomic nervous system thinking there's some sort of threat when there really isn't. So it's your brain trying to protect you from something that doesn't need protection. And once you realize that, you got to get what I call little victories in order to start to overcome these inhibitions that you've built up over a lifetime. You start to have to gather little victories. I remember when I was younger, in my early to mid 20s, I was reading a book, and the book said, can you remember all your successes in life? And I thought, fuck, no, I couldn't think of any successes, because all I ever remembered was my perceived failures, which never really turned out to be failures in the long run. There are always actually good things that occurred. Just back then, I felt what I felt, so I associated it with negative aspects of me, like I can't do this. I'm just terrible at this. I'll never get this right. And it was a personal failing for feeling something, and in reality, it was just a feeling, which is nothing. It just goes away. So I didn't have any of those small victories. I only remembered the defeats, which really weren't defeats, and that changed and I started to think, and they said, usually you don't even notice all these little victories because you take them for granted. Things like graduating high school, going to college, getting a job, whatever it's going to be. I never thought of any of those things as victories because for where I grew up, that was kind of just expected. But then I started to really think about, that I was good at certain things. I think I had started dancing, so that was a little victory. And so there were I started to notice these little victories, and that actually gave me some confidence. So my inhibition started to decrease a little bit. And once you can break that wall, once you make a dent, once you make a crack in that wall of armor of too much inhibition out of fear of failure or fear of pain, and then you start to make these other realizations that, wow, I was more successful than I thought I was, or let's just keep it there. I could go off on so many different tangents. But once you start to realize, maybe I am better than I thought I was. Once you pierce that armor, the whole story that you've created in your mind about what a failure you are, or why you just can't do things, starts to kind of crumble. And then you start to become less inhibited, and your energy starts to flow again. And that is huge. Energy starts to flow towards positivity. And then, so let me just show you this picture. And there I am teaching. Like, to me, that's a big story. That you didn't have my life, so you'd be like, big deal. But I could not have been as comfortable as I was 15 years ago. I would have been a nervous wreck. I don't think I could have done that. I couldn't have done it. So the process for me going from quietest to now, that is the founder's head. The bald head in front, or half bald head, the blue shirt, he's listening to me. Ron Huruska, he is listening to me. And it was kind of like mind blowing that he's there taking notes, by the way. Uh, like that's like I went from, a scared, fearful, timid, low self-esteem, a body that was completely shut down and fragmented patterns. My body was not working. Now there were physical issues, obviously, but I still think most of it was just negative energy from too much inhibition out of not understanding life the way it needed to be understood, or my teenage brain could not interpret life's events without too much negative attachments attached to it. Couldn't process things properly, which inhibits your energy into a negative cycle of just tension. And a lot of that tension then leads to pain because the body becomes fragmented and nothing's working together anymore because these patterns are really strong. So the story from high school to now, that's really what part of the presentation was about. And trust me, if I could do it, there's no reason that anyone watching this can't do it, because we all have some fears and some inhibitions. It's just a process of letting go. And it's no different than PRI itself. Remember, most of us don't have true muscular issues. The muscles move us, yes, but it's a brain issue at its core. And it's a fear. It's a fear of falling. It's not that you would realize that, but it's a fear of using that left side that has become too unstable. It's a brain that is fearful. That's what inhibition, too much inhibition is from too much fear. PRI techniques allow you to gain some confidence in your body, allows your brain to trust your body so it can start to be used again effectively. So I always say that PRI is, if you've ever heard of cognitive behavior therapy, it's where they expose people to fearful events, fearful situations, little by little, so they can gain some confidence and realize, oh, it's not so bad. That's what kind of PRI is like too. It's like cognitive behavior therapy for your body, so that activities that your brain was once fearful of, out of threat, out of fear of injury, become more accepted, and little by little you start to recover. So that is I just want people to realize again that the mental processes that inhibit us are also can't really be separated from the physical experiences, the physical movements that become inhibited. The patterns that we talk about don't have their origins in the muscles, they have the origins in the brain. And those patterns that have to be turned off are highly emotional patterns, not just muscular patterns. I just want to leave that there, let you think about it a little bit. Think about life's events, the traumas, the hurt, the pain, emotional, not physical, that strengthen these patterns and also need to be inhibited. Because remember, this is inhibited. This activity is all about inhibition. These patterns need to be inhibited. You may have to let go of some things you've been holding on to for a long time before you really start to feel better with PRI techniques, because it's not separate. The life of the mind and the life of the body are the same. They're not different, let's put it that way. So hopefully that was just something that you could think a little bit differently about postural restoration and these techniques and what they really are.